Welcome to the Guns and Noses podcast. My name's Helen Taylor and I am the owner of Guns and Noses, and I own 3 Labradors. We're here to talk about real moments, real lives, and the wins, the wobblers, and the occasional up yours moments. We're talking about those dogs with enthusiasm and us humans who are trying to keep up. So why don't you sit back, grab a brew, slow down, and listen in. Hello to my lovely listeners, and I hope you are all staying cool in this heat wave. I am currently recording this podcast sat in my office in the dark because all my curtains and blinds are shut in the house with my aircon blaring away, so I hope you can't hear it, but if you can, sorry not sorry, because it's keeping me and the dogs nice and cool. And the dogs are just chilled out because I took them out really early this morning. I went and mucked the horses out. I was down there for about 6 o'clock this morning so that we could all get out of the house in the nice, cool morning air. And it was absolutely glorious. But I do hope that you're all managing to cope okay and that, well, you've figured out how to stay cool, because let's face it, that's a big problem in this country because we're just not set up for it, are we? We don't have the infrastructure. Anyway, I'm absolutely sure you're all sick and tired of hearing about the sun, and I'm gonna move on. Now, today's episode is a little bit controversial, possibly, but I am wanting to talk to you all about how we can change behaviours without doing too much. Now, you've probably all heard the saying, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Now, I'm sure you've all heard that before, but in the context of dog training, it absolutely does sit true. Because what I see quite regularly is people repeating the cue that they want their dog to do, but the dog either ignores them or carries on regardless. So I suppose that's the same as ignoring them, and they don't get a different result. And whether or not that is the actual definition, it's not really the point of this podcast. The message behind it is incredibly relevant when it comes to dog training. Many people find themselves stuck in a cycle. Their dog might pull on the lead, so they keep going for the same walks in the same places. Their dog ignores their recall, so they keep calling them over and over and over again in situations where the dog is absolutely guaranteed to fail. Their dog might jump up at visitors, so they keep inviting people in and hoping that somehow, miraculously, this time the dog will magically make a different choice. But then weeks and months go by and the frustration builds because nothing has changed. But you see, here's the thing. If we keep practicing the same behaviours, we keep getting the same results. Dogs learn through repetition. Every time your dog rehearses a behaviour, they're getting better at it. That's the good, the bad, and the ugly. Unfortunately, they don't know whether it's a behaviour we'd like or not, or one we'd rather they didn't do. So if your dog spends every walk dragging you from lamppost to lamppost, they're becoming a professional lead puller. If your dog ignores recall, gets rewarded by continuing to run around with their mates or chasing a rabbit or a deer, what they're actually learning is that ignoring you is a brilliant choice because they're having a lot of fun by themselves. The hard truth to this is that what you're doing isn't working and something needs to change. It doesn't mean you've failed, and it definitely doesn't mean that your dog is stubborn. And this one I want you to really listen to. It doesn't mean you're a bad owner. It simply means you've gathered some information, you've discovered that the current plan isn't producing the result you want, but now it's time to adapt and change. Maybe that means creating more distance from distractions, or lowering your expectations as an owner and working at a level where your dog can succeed. Or maybe it means investing in some professional support. If you can take a step back and ask yourself, what is my dog actually learning from this situation? Because every interaction is training, whether you like it or not. The most successful dog owners aren't the ones who never hit a roadblock. They're the ones who are willing to change their approach when something isn't working. So if you're currently feeling stuck, here's my challenge for you. You know I like to give you challenges. Instead of asking yourself, why isn't my dog getting it? Ask, what could I do differently? That one question can completely change your training journey. Your dog doesn't need you to be perfect. They need consistency. They need clarity and a human who's willing to adjust the plan when necessary. And after all that, if we want different results, we need to give our dogs a different learning experience. And that actually is where the magic happens. So dogs see in pictures and in context. And today I was talking to a lovely client who was asking me a question about her dog and how well behaved she was, even though she was in a known environment with a known dog, but the full context was very different. And I said, well, the reason why she behaved beautifully was probably a number of factors. One is that in that environment that you are usually doing some training. She was around her home. She wasn't in a training class or a hall. She was around her home. And the lady that she met up with was also doing some training with her dog. So in context, the environment gave her the cues that she was doing some training, so she had to behave in a certain way. But also the person they met up with was doing some training, so they had to behave in a certain way. Whereas if they'd have met up in an unknown space, it may have still gone the same way, but it also may have all fallen apart because the environment isn't known. It's out of context. And dogs are really, really good at picking up on our cues, body cues, signals, other people's, other dogs, and the environment themselves. So when we look at training, what does that environment tell your dog? If you go to the same park every day and meet up with a group of friends, either theirs or yours, and the dog is allowed to behave in a certain way, let's say they're running around, having a wonderful time, playing, jumping on each other, and then you go one day and you don't want them to do that, it's going to be very difficult for you to change that picture quickly. They will default into what they know and what they enjoy, which is charging around and having a really good time. But then you might go to another environment that they don't know and they behave completely differently. And it's all to do with the picture in the dog's mind as to what that environment or that person means. So if you have a problem that you need sorting, don't keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome, because as we heard from the beginning of the podcast, that's the definition of insanity. Instead, do something slightly different. Even one little tweak to how you ask, how you stand, what's in the environment, what you take with you, can be enough to change the picture and stop the unwanted behaviour from unfolding. Right in front of your eyes, you will have a different dog. And it's amazing how small changes make big differences. I'm not telling you on this podcast that you're all insane, because that's not what I'm about. What I try and do is get my clients who work with me in person or in the Insiders Club to just think very differently about what's happening, what's unfolding in front of them. What does their dog see as the picture, and are they on the same page as their owner? Because a lot of the time they're not. All I want you to do as listeners is take the information and think, how can we improve things? How can we make that conversation more fluid between us and our dogs? And how can we make sure that that consistency and clarity comes through without repeating the same old cues and without getting the same behaviours that we actually don't want to see? So this week's homework, and I always like to leave you with something, is if you've got a problem that you're trying to change, let's say barking at the door or jumping up or running off and not coming back, I want you to do just something slightly different. It could be go to a different location if it's recall. It could be when someone walks through the door, instead of you inviting them in and the dog's allowed to jump all over them, pop them on a lead. It could be if they bark at a door, each time the doorbell goes, instead of running after them going, "Hey, Fido, stop it, be quiet," or shoving them behind a baby gate or something, but yet they're still allowed to bark, why not grab a handful of treats and throw them on the floor before you go to the door? Something small, a very small change can just help change the direction of a single behaviour. And then it's not forever. You have a chance of modifying the behaviour. So when we look at modifying behaviours, we look at the trigger and we look at the response from the dog, and then we try and break the response when the trigger is there by doing something different, by lowering the tone of the doorbell or the knock on the door, and getting a huge amount of rewards in so that the dog starts to think slightly differently about their behaviour and what is actually expected of them. So a bit of observation this week. I hope you enjoyed the podcast, and if you need any help, please do reach out to me, because I'm more than happy to help. We can jump on a Zoom consult. So if you're not local to me in East Yorkshire, we can jump on a Zoom consult. If you want some further help but you don't really have sort of time to get into like weekly classes and things like that, I've got the Insiders Club. We do monthly Q&A sessions. That's a freedom to speak and ask any questions that you want. We do the monthly sip and trains, which are a theme set by me, and they are some training that you do online. I have the videos in there to help coach you through certain behaviours. And this month, well, should I say next month, because it's right at the beginning, but it's next month, we have our very first guest expert speaker, who is the wonderful Dr. Jacqueline Boyd, and she is a nutrition expert, and she's going to come on and talk to us all things dog nutrition. So every quarter there is a guest expert, and the one after, in September, I have managed to bag us the wonderful Rachel Bean, who is a veterinary nurse who travels the world, and she also has another company called Vets on Set, where she goes around and supports animals on production in studios. So she is joining us in September. So if you'd like to join the Insiders Club, then I'd love to have you, love to see you. And you can find the link in my bio. But until next time, keep training kindly and try to keep up. Thank you for spending this time with me. If today's episode helped you slow down, feel seen, or think a little differently about your dog, then it's done its job. Remember, progress isn't about perfection, it's about observation and reflection. You're not behind, you're not failing, and you're definitely not alone. Until next time, keep training kindly and try to keep up.